Hey, it's April with the Possible Diet, and today I thought I'd show you how to make kind of like a variation on the tuna boats that I had a couple of weeks ago. God, almost a month ago now. And these are kind of like Cajun shrimp and sausage boats. I saw these globe zucchinis at the farmer's market, and it gave me the idea to do kind of what we did with the other ones, but in a fun, differently shaped way. This is a super simple recipe. It's basically just shrimp, chicken andouille sausage, and then you can use pork or beef andouille sausage if that's what you have access to. The shrimp I'm using is the Key West pink shrimp. It's wild caught, tail off, uncooked. And I get it uncooked because I'm gonna cook it in the pan with the Cajun seasonings, and I don't want it to dry out. So that's why I'm starting with uncooked. And I'm just using about half the package. Obviously double this recipe if you want. I just don't need, like a dozen Cajun shrimp boats. Other things I'm adding are peppers. I'm using a mix of red, yellow, and orange, and then some extra green pepper. Green onions. I'm using white onions and red onions. You can just use white, just use red if you want. I like using green in combination with white or red because it just gives it a little more spice. I've got some celery stems that I'm gonna throw in there for flavor. And then this was this weird leaf that I saw at the farmer's market that kind of looked like Russian kale, but it wasn't Russian kale. I didn't catch what it was. I steamed it the other day and it tasted pretty good. So I'm just adding some stems for nutrients, basically. They're not gonna add that much flavor, hopefully. And then whipping cream. Oh, and I have my garlic confit, but you can use olive oil and garlic paste if you like. And then of course, slap ya mama Cajun seasoning. I'm just trying this. You can try any Cajun seasoning that you have that you like. But this, aside from salt and pepper, is pretty much the only seasoning in this dish to keep it simple. And then of course, whatever's already in the andouille sausage. So I'm gonna prep my ingredients and we'll get ready to go. Okay, so all of our ingredients are prepped and we're ready to start cooking. Now I'm eyeballing a lot of this. It depends on the size of the globe. Zucchinis, you wanna scoop these out. I just scoop these out using a large tablespoon, and then I'm saving the insides for something else. Normally I would cook the insides with whatever I'm adding, but because this dish has a lot of volume already, I'm using it for something else rather than putting it back in. Sometimes when you stuff like mushroom caps, you saute the stems and then add stuff and then pile it on, but I'm adding a lot inside these, so that's why I'm saving it for another recipe. And then you want to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Just turning this up. We're only going to bake them for about 15 minutes, long enough to kind of like heat up the zucchinis. Oh, put just a little bit of olive oil, like a couple of teaspoons in the bottom of your pan, and cut off the stems. But for these, you can just leave them like that. Okay, now that that's covered, this is getting hot. The other thing I didn't mention before is I like to put a little shredded Gouda on top. I find that the nuttiness and smokiness of the Gouda is really nice with this dish, but it's totally optional. You can leave it out if you don't want it. So start off with a hot pan, add some of your garlic confit. If you don't have garlic confit, you can use garlic flavored olive oil or a little bit of garlic and regular olive oil. I like this. I've gotten in the habit of just keeping this in the fridge. I use it in a week or two, which is pretty good. It's so handy to have, and I use it for so much. And then we've got 6 ounces of defrosted but still uncooked pink shrimp. Go ahead and add those in. Drained. And we're cooking this in stages. So as we finish things, we're gonna put them in the pan. And then here, if you have some celery stems, These are just the tiny little celery stems from the tips of the celery. I was lucky enough to get celery that had leaves attached to it. So I make a celery salt, kind of like a sprinkle with those. That's really nice. But I like to save the stems. This is just like a couple of tablespoons, maybe 3 tablespoons. And then add your Cajun spice of your choice. I'm adding a teaspoon and a half, a couple teaspoons maybe. Make sure you check the ingredients. Oh, it's peppery. It's not COVID, I promise. Oh, it's just it's just that pepper. Make sure you look at the ingredients of your Cajun spice. Some of it is mostly salt, like this Slap Ya Mama, excuse me, is the first ingredient was salt. So I added a little extra pepper, a little paprika, a little oregano, and a little thyme to round it out. But I will link in this recipe to a homemade Cajun spice recipe that is really good. I just thought I'd give Slap Ya Mama a try, see how it turned out. So once your shrimp have curled up a little bit, they're not like fully cooked, but they're just kind of curled up and ready. That's when you want to spoon them right into your cloves. Ooh, my nose is running. I try to do like 3 or 4 shrimp per zucchini. So that everybody gets a few. My nose is running with those peppers. Sometimes one person gets shafted, but sometimes everybody gets them and it's okay. And then in that same pan that you sauteed your shrimp in, you want to add your chicken andouille sausage or regular andouille sausage if you want. And then because this has its own seasoning, I'll add just a little bit of oil. It's chicken sausage, so it's like not quite as fatty as pork sausage. And then if you want to add anything else like kale stems, any other kind of sort of like neutrally green, I would add it here because that sausage is going to have a lot of flavor. This is maybe a 1/4 cup. We're building layers so that, you know, you get a different bite of something every time you cut into it, which makes it kind of pretty. This will take longer to cook than the shrimp, so probably fast forward this part in the video. These sausages are usually pre-smoked or pre-cooked, so all you're really doing here is getting some color on them. You don't have to worry about cooking it from raw. It's very rare to find like andouille sausage that's raw, but if you do find it, just make sure that you cook it until it's actually cooked. But in the case of these, they're already cooked. Once those sausages have got a little color on them, go ahead and add them to your little dishes. And if you have extra, feel free to tuck it in between the little spaces. It's kind of nice when you take something out of a casserole dish and there's like leftover filling in the bottom. You're like, ooh yeah. This way the bottom of the zucchinis taste just as good as the insides. Now you're going to add your onions. I'm using like a 1/4 cup of red onion, 1/4 cup of white onion, generous 1/4 cup of green bell pepper, and then this is a combination of one big yellow bell pepper and a little bit of these tiny little peppers. They look like they should be hot peppers, but they're sweet peppers that I got at the farmer's market, and I thought that'd be nice to add a little bit of color. And don't worry about the amount of this, because this will go all over the top of this, and then all down the sides and in the middle. And there should be enough fat left over from the sausage and the garlic confit so that you don't need to add additional oil to stir fry these, but if you need to, feel free. If you want to use up the rest of your celery, toss that on in. I'm worried that this is going to taste too strong, so I'm being a little sparing with that. But celery always adds a nice flavor, and it is very popular in Cajun and Creole food. So don't worry that it'll take away from the dish somehow. And I like to cook these just long enough to get them kind of bright and a little bit soft. We're not trying to cook down the peppers until they're totally soft and faded. I like a little crunch in my dishes. If you want to add a little more Cajun seasoning at this point, feel free. Cajun it up. Prepared for me to sneeze. It really just depends on how hot and spicy you want your dish to be. You could just do salt and pepper if you want. And remember, if you're worried about this being not, not oily enough or not liquidy enough, I'm putting cheese on top of this, so some of the oil from the cheese I know is gonna kind of soak into the peppers a little. So that's why I'm not adding more of my garlic confit. All right, that looks pretty good. The onions are just starting to be a little translucent, but the peppers are still bright. So I'm going to add this on top of this and then top the whole thing with cheese. My oven preheated a little too quickly. How's that for getting your 5 a day? There's like 5 different vegetables in this thing. I think I try to eat low carb, but if I have to choose between eating carbs with a ton of vegetables or eating low carb, I'll pick the vegetables every time because they're full of fiber and nutrients. And, like Michael Pollan says, it's like you should eat not too much, mostly plants. I think that there are compounds in fruits and vegetables that we haven't even discovered yet that, improve our health. All right. Now I'm going to put this in here for just about 15 to 20 minutes, enough for the cheese to melt and bubble and broil on the top. Our casserole has been baking for 15 minutes. It looks glorious. Now, this last bit is optional, but if you can tolerate a little bit of fat, it's delectable. Get a toothpick, or a chopstick, make a hole, and then pour just a little bit, maybe like a teaspoon of cream into the middle. I used to work with a guy who did this with his apple pies, and it just added this layer of decadence that was out of sight. And this is when they're fresh out of the oven. And then you want to let it kind of firm up for a hot minute and serve. All right, I'll show you the finished product in just a sec. All right, this has been cooling, so let's see how it is. Ooh, this cheese is so I've got here some carrot tops and parsley, just to top it, give it a little bit of green. You can add some green onions if you like green onions. And there is our clove zucchini. Doesn't that look good? Ooh, it's perfectly cooked inside, filled with shrimp and yummy andouille sausage. And it's packed with veggies, so it's totally good for you. And the cream just gives it a teeny bit of richness that I don't think it would have otherwise, but it still keeps it, pretty healthy. Enjoy.